Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today we're going to be tackling the steering head bearings on our 2007 Honda Goldwing GL 1800A. Now if you're starting to notice a little bit of stiction, getting a little bit tougher to move the handlebars back and forth, maybe feeling some clicking going on as you're going from left to right, chances are the bearings are probably worn out. Now I don't want to scare you, but this is a pretty involved procedure. So let's step over and look at some of the tools, and more importantly the special tools you're going to need to pull this off. Now basically you're going to need a pretty well stocked toolbox, as you can tell. On the wrench side you need to go from an 8 up to a 24. As always, a good 3/8 ratchet, good torque wrench, a couple of different chisels, pliers, and then you want to have a range on your Allens going from a 3 up to a 6. Also make sure you've got a T40 Torx. On the socket side, once again a range, 8 up to 30. A couple of different extensions and a good hammer. Now on the special tool side, well, there's a couple you may need to pick up at your hardware store. In my case, I'm using a steel rod, and then we're going to use a 1/2 inch steel pipe as well. Now on the serious side with some of the special tools, you need a bearing driver set, but you need to make sure it is capable of driving tapered bearings. Another special tool you're going to need is one from Honda, because you need to get that steering stem nut off. Another real important one I chose is this Motion Pro. This actually can extract those inner races from the front of the frame inside of that neck. Very important. Last but not least, need a cutoff wheel. Needed to be pretty small. I prefer this one from Dremel. Now, as far as the parts go, you know me, I'm usually an OEM guy. That's what I believe in, that's what I promote. In this particular instance, what we are going to use is a tapered set of bearings from All Balls Racing. They have been doing this for a long time. I truly believe in their product, and it fits perfectly with this particular machine, and they even include the different dust shields that you're going to need to get this assembly done. Now if you decide to go with the same setup that I'm using here from All Balls Racing, look at that description. There's a little arrow over to the right beside the description, that's going to take you to the parts list that we ended up using on this machine. Now if your machine isn't exactly like the one that I'm working on, then you need to go to Partzilla.com. It's very easy to use. There you'll need to select the manufacturer, the category, the year, and then the model. At that point, you're going to see all the different components for your particular machine to make sure that you're going to get the right part. Now, if you're still having a little bit of trouble, give us a call at 1-877-473-4595. We'll be glad to help and get you the correct part for your machine and get it to you quickly. So once you've got all of your tools and your parts, we can jump over there and I can walk you through it. So let's go. It's going to be a ride. All right guys, before we dive into this, first order of business is to go ahead and bring the machine up, get something to support the front end, and then actually anchor down all 4 corners, because I don't want this thing falling on me. All right, that should hold it still, so let's go ahead and get the upper fender off. These first ones are just a 5mm Allen. Do yourself a favor when you're taking this apart, try to leave them together, because there's a couple of different lengths that we're going to run into in designs as we're pulling this apart. So keep them all grouped together. All right, next we want to get our calipers off, and you'll notice that it's different one side to the other. Over here it's just going to be a pair of 12mm. On the other side, let's go ahead and get the brake pads out of the caliper. That way it'll clear the rotor. Just remove that little plastic stopper, and then we're going after that Allen on the inside, and that is a 5mm. There we go. Now they should just drop out. Now we can go ahead and remove that 6mm Allen at the bottom, and then that T40 Torx at the top. All right, now we can remove that 22mm axle nut. Then we can loosen up our pinch bolts on either side. Don't have to remove them, just loosen them up. And those are 12mm. Pull the axle out. Just put a screwdriver into our axle. Lift up on the tire a little bit, and now we should be able to wiggle it out. So go ahead and get these 2 spacers out. All right, now that we've got the front tire out of the way, we're going to continue by getting all the different brake parts disconnected. We want to pull just the top half of this plunger assembly. That's a 4mm Allen. Brackets everywhere. Let's go ahead and take off that front bracket for the fender and see if we can get it to angle out of there. I do not want to scratch it. Alrighty. That's going to be fun to put back together. Alright, well, I don't think we need to zip tie up anything, but I kind of like the way it's hanging, so I think we're good. Let's go ahead and get that cross member off, and then we'll lower down the machine and start attacking the top of the forks. Hidden inside this cross member are 4 5mm Allens. Once we remove those, it should split in half and release from the tubes. Chances are you don't have one on yours. So it is aftermarket. I can see the manufacturer on the top of it. And the guy that owned this bike, he really did do a fantastic job of taking care of it. He was actually president of the local Goldwing Riders Club. All right, so we need to remove this section. It's basically just pull. And get it out just a little bit. Have to reach around and disconnect the tweeters. Little rubber gasket, then you can reach in and release it by pushing that top section down right there. Now, just need to unplug it right above the key. What I was having to do is reach in there and push down on this hard enough to where it releases that latch. So once you get that, it'll pull off. I had to get a pair of pliers just to push down on it hard enough. Next, let's get the display speedo out, starting with these 4 8mm bolts. The real trick here, just pull it out far enough where you can get your hand to the back and release the cable. There we go. There were 3 cables that we had to get to. Each one of them, you pull this back, and then you have to push down on these releases. With that out of the way, we can get this upper cover off. Then we can loosen up the pinch bolts and drop each leg out. We've got 2 pinch bolts up top and then 4 at the bottom. So you do not have to remove these, you just want to loosen them up. So we've got the forks out of the way, and let's go ahead and take off this bracket down at the bottom that's mounting all these different hoses and electrical connections to the lower part of the clamp. Just a couple of 8mm head bolts. Next, there are 2 Phillips screws holding this little plastic flap right here. So we need to remove that. We'll see if we can get it to bust loose with a number 2. They're not that bad. All right, there's 2 more Phillips up top. With a really long Phillips, there should be enough of a straight shot to get them. Get the other side. There's a little bracket right there that I didn't remove anything on it. It's just been hanging up there. It's actually for the turn signal cancellation. When you're going through a turn, after you've got your turn signal on, when you straighten it back up, there's a little potentiometer up down there. And when it goes straight, it turns off your turn signal. But at some point in this machine's life, somebody forgot to put the screws to hold it up to the base. But we'll straighten that out when we put it back together. We should be able to drop that piece out. There we go. Yeah, you can tell this one's been getting twisted around a little bit. So we've got our cables and our hoses disconnected, and what we need to do next, we actually have to pull the whole shelf because we have to get this lower cover out. So let's just dive in, get it all out of the way, then we can finally get to this bracket, get it unbolted, and then we can disconnect the handlebar bolts, drop them down, and then get to the stem hardware. If you need a detailed video on how to remove and then reinstall the shelf, I think the best one out there that we've done is the air filter change. It goes through step by step on how to do it. This one bracket right here caused all of that to have to happen. Back toward the back, you can just pull this plastic out of the way. There's going to be 2 8mm back toward the back. This plug is getting in the way of the bracket being able to clear straight up. There we go. Had to push it from the back side right there to get it to flip out. There we go. Let's go and remove those 4 14mm bolts, lay the handlebars out of the way, and then go for that steering stem. They didn't very graceful, but they're out of the way. That upper fork mount bolt is 30mm. At this point, we should be able to lift off that upper clamp, wiggle it out. Next, we need to get the steering stem nut off, and you're going to need this special tool to do it. There we go. Reach through and grab it from the bottom so it doesn't fall. Upper cover, seal the inner part of the race, and you can see the ball bearings. Now, just need to reach around the front of the machine and lower it out. All right, this one had the stock bearings in it. These don't look to be in bad shape, but they're the original old style, and we're going to be upgrading. So we're going to put this to the side for a moment and go ahead and knock those other races out of the head of the frame. And the trick is there, you can pound those out with a steel rod and a hammer. Honda makes a rather large kit that will actually pull them and then install them. But then the one I'm going to use is made by Motion Pro. Nice little setup. And the good part of it, it can be adapted to several different motorcycles, so you're not just locked into the Goldwing. To use it, we'll put this section down into the frame head, tighten this down, which expands this collar out, and that'll lock it in place. Put this over the top with that extraction bolt, and it should just pull it right into this cup. There she goes in. All right, now it's got a firm grip on it. So, get our cup, a washer. To save so much wear and tear on your tool, put a little bit of grease around this just to make it easier for it to turn against that washer and not to gouge it up so bad. Well, let's see if we can break it free. There we go. And she's out. Now to pull the bottom, it's a little bit larger diameter, so you'll need to get an alternate cup. But just to show you an alternative way to just do it using a punch. You've got a cutout at the front and the back, and that's where you want to get your punch to go, right there. Where you've got a small edge you could get a punch onto. But that's how little you have to work with on trying to push that race out. So just make sure you're on that lip and not on the frame itself. All right, we've got that knocked out. Let's head over to the teardown bench and get that inner race cut off the steering stem. You can order this assembly from Honda, but it already has that pressed on there. And the good part about the inner races are they're very hard, so that makes them also very brittle. So what we need to do is take a Dremel tool and just notch them on either side. Then I should be able to take this punch and shatter them to get them off, so we won't have to go all the way through. You want to be careful when you're doing this because you do not want to get this in your eye should it decide to shatter. All right, let's see if that's enough to pop it loose. There goes part of it. Cut a little bit more. That's almost got it. That's actually cracked it all the way across. There we go. Tell you what, so we can get this a little bit easier to work on, we're going to go ahead and spin it around. Notch out that other side. She's going to fall right off. Bingo. Now with the race off, let's go ahead and get that dust shield knocked off. Then we can actually start putting this back together. Cool thing about this kit is they actually send you the dust seals with it. All right, let's get our first tapered bearing in. Of course, you want the taper end to be facing up. And what I'm going to be using is just a 1.5 inch metal pipe I've cut down that fits just on the inside of this inner part of the race, and that's when you want to make sure you're only hitting on that, because if you hit on the outside, either you're going to scar it or damage it, or worse than that, you're going to crack it. Because as you noticed, this is made out of some very rigid material. That should be it. Well, the steering stem is ready to go. Now it's time to get these tapered races into the steering stem head of the frame. Just make sure you're using a tapered bearing driver. And actually Motion Pro makes a great setup that works for this particular application. So you may want to look into that one. I'm just going to use one of my existing ones. Make sure you're driving it in level. There we go. You can tell when it bottoms out, it has that very metallic sound to it. Let's feel up under the edge. I believe that's it. Let's go grab our other one and get it driven into the bottom. And she is seated. So we've got our races in place. Let's go ahead and grease up the bearings and get that stem in there. When you're applying the grease, push as much as you can in there. Same thing for the bottom. When they ship these out, it just has a light coating of oil, which is not going to be enough. That's why it's very important to get your grease in there, because all that oil does is keep them from rusting until you're ready to use them. I'm also going to coat the race surface as well, on the bottom and the top. One more place is on the inside of this dust seal. That way it crams just as much as it can into those rollers. So let's bring up the stem and get this put back together. Got things started, and per this manufacturer, we're going to set it in between 28 and 30 foot-pounds. We'll rock it back and forth a few times, torque it again to make sure it's seated in there right. Now we're going to put in our lock washer, lock nut, and we're going to bring this down just hand tight. Then we're going to turn it an additional 90 degrees or thereabout until it lines up with these two tabs, and then we're going to bend them into position. So we want this to be right at 90 degrees. It doesn't have to be exactly. So let's take this point right here, and we're going to put it up at the top for that tab. There. Now we just need to bend those tabs up into position. Now with that set up, let's get our upper bridge and stem nut. And we're just going to put it on there hand tight for the moment, because we can't really torque it down until we get the forks up in there. Right now I'm just eyeballing it because the bottom of the clamp is all the way over. We're going to put this one basically in the same position, and the forks should just slide right up in there. But before we put the forks in, we need to route the throttle cables back into that little holder, because they actually end up on the back side of the forks. So they need to go ahead and be in position right here. So let's go grab that right fork and go ahead and get it into position. There we go. You don't have to be worried about your tube height, because this is only temporarily, so we can get the stem nut torqued down. And now we're going to take the stem nut to 76 foot-pounds. Well, congratulations, guys. The steering head bearings are in there, but we're far from through. So let's see if we can get this thing put back together. I'm actually going to go ahead and drop the forks back out. All right, I'm not going to torque these down until I get all the different clamps that hold these different cables and hoses in place in case I have to readjust anything. So we're just going to put them in there hand tight for the moment. The bracket, which actually holds the bottom of the display, let's go ahead and get it in place. And it's just held in place by a couple of these 8mm head bolts. Hopefully you kept everything organized when you were pulling it apart. Now the one on the left actually has a cable holder on it, right there. That's going to go here. And then that cable holder goes across it like that. All right, so far so good. Let's get that upper bracket and get these cinched down. There. Now, let's go ahead and feed up that steering position switch up through the steering stem and get that connected. Push this back in and get that cap on and get it remounted. So you've got this bracket here. Make sure you get it lined up correctly with those two little protrusions. There's a couple of Phillips. Then swing this little bracket over and it'll go in that little potentiometer right there. Let's go ahead and get these hose clamps mounted down. Then we can put in that plastic cover. And these two slots go on the collars of those two Phillips that are back in the back. In the front, it's just held in by these two Phillips. A lot going on the front of a Goldwing. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and torque down those handlebar bolts. They're going to be set to 19 foot-pounds. All right, so now it's time to bring the shelf over. Now I'm going to go ahead and buzz through this part of it because we actually have a detailed air filter video that shows turn by turn, screw by screw, how to get the shelf back in. All right, we've got the shelf put back together. Let's go ahead and get those forks back in there. So we're going to go ahead and slide it up into place. And we're just going to lightly tighten it because we need to go up top to actually set the correct depth. So we're a little high right there. We want the top of the upper tree to be at the same level as the cap itself. And that should be it. So we want 19 foot-pounds on the top pinch bolt and then 21 on the two lower ones. There we go, looking good. Let's grab that right fork and then get it in place. Do the same torquing procedure on it. All right, as you're bringing this up, remember to bring the throttle cables on the back side of the fork tube because they're going to try to get in the way. There we go. So with all of that in place, let's go ahead and get the instrument cluster back in, a couple other covers, and get that, that dash plate back on. Make sure everybody lights up. All right, let's get our dash back on. Don't forget to plug this in, as well as the tweeters. All right, we're pretty much finished up top. Now, let's go back up front and get it finished. Let's start by getting some of our brackets back in place, holding our various lines. There's a whole lot going on the front of this machine. I'm not going to tighten these down yet until I'm sure I've got all the lines routed correctly. Top bracket actually goes through the fork and then into this threaded section that's part of the rear fender, but on the front right here. I remember that being the tricky part. And then this one goes straight through on the other side. Now we're starting to get somewhere. With those two in place, we can go ahead and tighten down these forward brackets. Let's go ahead and remount our anti-dive cylinder. It's just a couple of 4mm Allens. Then we have this little speed sensor wire bracket that goes here. Tell you what, let's go and bring our front wheel over. Speed sensor ring on that side. Get our spacers in. I've got to center that spacer. There we go. Bring it up, slide that axle through. So we can get it to twist back in there. There we go. All right, we've got it bottomed out against this other side. So temporarily, I want to go ahead and tighten down the left side pinch bolts. Now, we want to put on the axle nut and then get it torqued down. We're going to take it to 44 foot-pounds. Next, we can go ahead and torque the right side pinch bolts to 16 foot-pounds. Let's go back over to the left, and I want to release those because I want to show you something here. There's a line that needs to be a reference point to make sure that these forks are parallel, but each machine's going to be a little bit different. So what you want to do is pull against it as far as you can, and then push with the same amount of pressure in, and then between those 2 points, that's where you want it. You want to pick that midpoint. And it may end up being right on that line, just like it was designed to be. But I've actually seen these machines to where that actual center point may be the width of the line out, or it may be the width of the line in. That one little change down here can make a whole big difference as far as it binding up top. You can usually tell a machine that's a little bit out of whack by when it's sitting on its side stand. If you lift up on it, on the handlebars just a little bit, and it stays there, there's too much stiction in the fork. They should go back down to a natural resting position. So let's take a look at this one, see what we've got. All right, that's a little bit past the line, and that's a little bit on the inside, and maybe a line and a half. So the midpoint should be about right there. Now that we found that midpoint, we can go ahead and torque these down to 16 foot-pounds. All right, let's start getting our calipers mounted up, get our brake pads in there, get that brake pin in. Now, if you need detailed instructions on remounting the brake shoes, we have a video that covers that, so go check it out. Gonna leave these on loose until I get the front section put on. Okay, the last piece that needs to go on is this cross brace, and I'm actually not going to use the one that came off the machine, and I'm going to tell you why. This one is what they call just a two-piece, and it just clamps it, and it forces the forks to go to whatever measurement that it's set at, and that's not good, as we were discussing that lower section, how important that adjustment is. So the kind that you want to go with is one that is actually adjustable left to right, and that's what I'm going to use. So when you're putting this one together, you actually loosen up the left and right to where it has some play. You can take off the end caps, tighten those down, then we go in and tighten down the center section. You want the longer one to go up front, the shorter one in the back. Same thing for the other side. Everybody's started, so let's get these tightened down. Now we can tighten down that center section, and that'll finish it up. So now it doesn't have any, it's not forcing the forks. It's actually just holding them in place now. Well, all right, guys, that pretty much wraps this one up. Well, listen, if you need the parts list for this, why don't you check the link in the description right below the video. It's already got a shopping cart ready with everything that we use to put this back together. Listen, if you like what you see, why don't you also hit that subscribe button? That way you can keep up with whatever I'm working on next. We just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla.com, and we will see you in the next video. Have a great day.